If you weren't here last semester, today will be the first day you start seeing grades for the new semester. So big day for that. If you were here last semester, then sorry, just focusing on this. If you were here last semester, then this is your first big grade as we start working on it. Is it working on that screen? Okay. First big grade that we're going to start working on, which is this writing benchmark, okay? We are going to spend time today workshopping, preparing for that. And then we're going to spend time, if you are Group B, you will be writing tomorrow and finishing that writing tomorrow. If you are Group B or Group A tomorrow, you'll be kind of focusing on something else because I want you to be here when you're writing, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that you can't write at home. If you're at home, you're welcome to be working on this, but you're going to have another assignment, and then we'll kind of do that switch where if you're at home, you'll be working on one thing, vice versa. But anyways, today, everyone's working on this together, okay? The first thing I want to look at is the rubric. This is how I will be grading you and the grade network that OPS has hired to come in and grade for us, because we send this off and we do a blind grading on these benchmarks, okay? Now, I will be simultaneously grading, but I'll be using the same system that they're using. Now, I'm only going to grade on this rubric to things that we've taught you, okay? I'm obviously not going to grade to a distinguished level because you're not at the end of your freshman year yet. So we're going to be grading to a proficient level, and we'll be discussing that as we look at that. Then we're going to talk about one of the biggest things we want to focus on, which is using sources in your writing and kind of like an in-text citation sources. And then we're going to practice that, and then we're going to look over our prompts today to prepare Group B for writing tomorrow and Group A at home to kind of start thinking about that as well. If you finish everything today, you can start your writing, okay, in No Red Ink, which is found in No Red Ink, okay? So first thing we're going to do is look at this rubric for the writing. If you click on that link there, and I want everybody to pull that up, although you'll be able to see it on my screen. I want you to be able to know where the copy is and what it looks like. I have it right here. So I know there is a lot on this page, okay? We're not going to read every single last word of this page, but we're going to look at the proficient category, what we're shooting for. So distinguished would be your goal at the end of your freshman year, going into your sophomore year, you want to be at the distinguished, okay, anywhere in that range. But for now, we're looking for proficient range, okay? So clarity and coherence, if we look at proficient, introduces and maintains precise claims, addresses all demands of the prompt, okay? So this basically says that you are capable of staying on point, okay? You are clear and coherent, and you stay on your point. So if you pick whichever side of the argument, you stick to that side, and you are clear to it, and then you also address the demands of the prompt. So we haven't read the prompt since Tuesday, so let's read the prompt. If you scroll down on the rubric to the bottom, this is our prompt and writing situation, okay? So it's our prompt. So let's read that together so we can kind of refresh our mind and say, what are we writing about again? And this is what we're looking at. And it kind of goes along with, or does go along with, our project. We're looking at how technology impacts us today, and this is, you're looking at, is it good or bad for us, and should we participate in this week without screens thing? So let's read this. So it says, many people feel texting and screen time in general has gotten out of hand. People are spending more and more time on their devices and less time in face-to-face conversations. They're using technology to quickly find answers rather than figuring things out on their own. Technology has allowed us to communicate and learn in new ways, but is it worth the cost? A group of parents and teachers have made a proposal to the school board. They are suggesting that Owensboro High School and OIA join in a national movement called Shut Down Your Screen Week. They feel that not using any electronic media for an entire week would be good for students. The school board has decided they would like to hear from students about this issue before they make a decision. So that is kind of our writing situation. We're looking at this shut down your screen week, and you are writing to the school board on whether you think we should do this or not. So let's look at our writing directions. I can't scroll down anymore. I'll move my face up here. So read the articles below, and they aren't listed here. They're in your prompt, and I have a packet for you, or they're on No Red Ink. So read the articles below, then write an essay that will be shared with the school board to explain your thinking about your issue. Your focus question is, should Owensboro High School and OIA participate in the National Shut Down Your Screen Week? Use evidence and examples from the article as well as your own knowledge to clearly support and develop your argument. Be sure to address the counterclaim from those who think differently than you. So there's three big things that you need to make sure you're doing to be clear and coherent, okay? Number one is you need to choose a side. Do you support or deny or denounce or against the shut down your screen week? You need to pick one of the two sides. You don't need to go back and forth, okay? You need to be clear. You either support it or don't support it, okay? Number two is that you are using evidence, clearly using evidence from the reading, okay? It is clear that you're pulling from the sources they gave you. You're not just going in there and writing your opinion and not referencing their sources. And then number three is that you use a counterclaim, because it clearly says that use evidence examples in an article as well as your knowledge to clearly support development of your argument. And then it says, be sure to address the counterclaim from those who think differently than you. So one of your paragraphs, and we did this last time, and it's built into No Red Ink, you need to address the other side in one paragraph and kind of address it and then explain why you believe it's not a strong argument, okay? And we'll look at that. But those are the big things. So in your mind, you should already be kind of picking a side and thinking about that. Let's go back up to the top here. So clarity and coherence. The second is the counterclaim, which we just talked about. So acknowledges and distinguishes claim or claims from alternate or opposing claims with insight, interpretation, and clarification. Counters and refutes opposing claims. So essentially, if you are for the no screens week, you need to give a paragraph where you show the other side and vice versa, okay? Support. So this support and this sourcing are the two things we're really going to work on in this portion, and we're going to work on today. So support fairly develops claims and or opposing claims with logical reasoning and relevant evidence. So anything that you make a stand for, so let's say that you say you support, no screens for a week. If you make the claim that screens are negative for students' memories, like it hurts our ability to memorize or to remember things, and you need to support that with your source, okay? You need to support that with evidence. Provide the most relevant evidence to support the claim. And opposing claim provides reasoning that points out the strength and limitations of the claim and opposing claim. So you point out why this is strong and why this is a good evidence. And that rolls right into our sourcing. So accurately and effectively uses a minimum of 2 provided sources. So it gives us a number. We need to use 2 of the sources it gives us. We have 3. Okay, you need to use 2 of those sources to support the claim and or opposing claim. So you could do one claim to support you and one claim that goes against you, and argue against that claim. Okay, but either way, you need to use at least 2 of those sources. I would shoot for 3. Okay, and if we looked at distinguish, it says provide 2 sources, but it's consistent. Okay, but 3 would be stronger. Organization builds and maintains a clear structure to develop the argument. That's why we're going to do the 5 or 6 paragraph essay in logical sequence. Uses effective words, phrases, and clauses, as well as varied syntax to link the major sections of the text. So this is what we were working on last semester, where we were having a topic sentence evidence sentence, support sentences, and then a connection sentence, okay? And we talked about that last semester. And then finally, language and conventions. This is what we've been working on in No Red Ink over the last semester. Establishes and maintains a formal tone or voice, establishes and maintains task-appropriate writing style, effectively uses appropriate word choice, and uses proper grammar, capitalization, spelling, errors, and things like that. So that is everything that you're going to be graded on. And the big things that we want to focus on today is that support in sourcing, okay? Because that's somewhere where we really struggled in our first benchmark, not only as a school, as a district, okay? So let's jump back over to our world studies, and that is available to you to look at as you write and as you are putting together ideas. So come back to that rubric as a source for you. So let's talk about using those sources, okay? How do we use sources in our writing? How do we, while we might reference them, how do we best do that? So if you click on this, this will take you to a workshop. And for this workshop, you will be able to use this PowerPoint, use this Google slide as a reference when you're writing. And we're going to talk about the guidelines, when we have these sources, guidelines on when to quote, when to paraphrase, or when to summarize. Okay, and we're going to talk about all three of these. Now, quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing isn't only for argumentative writing. This can also be for all types of different writing. Okay, one that we've done so far is informative writing, in which we have instead of picking and arguing a side, we pick something to give information about. So you can quote, paraphrase, summarize in any type of writing, but we're going to talk about for argumentative writing how we can do that. And probably what we're going to lean on the most in this for this writing is quoting. Okay, as freshmen, and we're going to talk about this as we go through this. It's probably the easier style to use of these three. Okay, as you get closer to your senior year, you'll probably lean more heavily on paraphrasing. Okay. And picking out what is most important to discuss or to highlight right now, okay? So the first one we're going to talk about is paraphrasing. Paraphrasing should be used when the passage has details, but not the exact words are important for the point, okay? So this is details that are usable, but you don't have to have it word for word. So paraphrase means to put in your own words. Okay, so an example here is the source text says, while many governments have taken steps to implement privatization programs, progress has been slower than was anticipated in the early 1980s. Okay, so you could take a direct quote from that, but really all you need to say is that it's been slower than anticipated. It's been slow. Okay, so a paraphrasing of this would be, according to Baylis 2003, although the implementation of privatization programs has been a priority for many governments, progress in the area has not been as rapid as expected. So it's changing some of those words, changing the way that they've said it. This, number one, protects you from plagiarism, but number two, puts it into words that maybe your audience or you would better understand, okay? Also, pay attention to what they did at the very beginning here. This is kind of a hint to or a lead into giving a source credit. So saying according to Baylis 2003 allows for the reader to understand that you are pulling from a credible source. You're pulling from someone that has authority or expertise in this source. We're going to be talking about how we do that and practice that today. So paraphrasing in general means putting in your own words. So when should I summarize? You should summarize when you have a long passage or passages where the main point is important to the point you're making, but the details are not. So you have this big, longer text, and you're going to summarize. So it's very similar to paraphrasing, but you're taking something longer. I didn't want to put a whole, 2 or 3 paragraphs on here, so I showed you a short version of this. So a source text would be, Peter and Elizabeth took a taxi to attend the night party in the city. While in the party, Elizabeth collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. So summarizing this, Elizabeth was hospitalized after attending a party with Peter. Okay, so you take this much longer narrative or idea and you shrink it down to the generalized, summarized points. Okay, this is something you should be familiar with and have been practicing, but I wanted to make sure you can kind of see the differences between each. And what strategy they use is they pulled out the main subjects, their actions, and the results. So if you just put this together without even changing words, you can say Peter, Elizabeth attend party, Elizabeth hospital. Okay, so it took out these big ideas and then changed that into a summarization. Elizabeth was hospitalized after attending a party with Peter. Okay, so summarizing, bringing it down to just the key points and kind of minimalizing the details you don't need. All right, so let's talk about quoting. And this is the one I really want to focus on today. Okay, what should be directly quoted? When should I use quotes? All right, so the big kind of 5 reasons. Number 1 is wording that is so memorable or powerful or expresses a point so perfectly that you cannot change it without weakening the meaning. Okay, so this is usually from someone that is very well known. Okay, you would not change their words because they're well known and they are so well emphasized. And on the next page, I have an example of that, and that would be Martin Luther King. Okay, Martin Luther King Jr. is one that you would want to quote directly. He said in his speech, Martin Luther King Jr. explained in his I Have a Dream speech, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That's a famous quote by Martin Luther King Jr., and you would never want to paraphrase that because it has so much power in not only who said it, but in what he's saying. So number 2, author's opinions you wish to emphasize. So again, whenever you have someone that has respect and authority and you want to give direct emphasis to them, author's words that show you are considering different points of view. So if this is contrary to what you are saying, you want to directly quote them so they can see what their argument is. Respected authority whose opinions support your ideas. This goes back to kind of number 1, that powerful respected authority. This would be the same reason for Martin Luther King Jr. Or if you're quoting like a doctor or quoting a respected business person or something like that. 5th, authors whose opinions challenge or vary greatly from those of others in the field. So if it is a direct, if this isn't an accepted idea, if this is something that's outside the norm, it's something that you want to directly quote. Something I didn't put in here that kind of came up as I was talking was if there's direct statistics or direct numbers or ways they say it that need to be directly quoted. So for formatting, quotes should have quotation marks surrounding them with the ending punctuation inside the quotation mark. Okay, that is the generalized kind of technique for formatting a quotation mark. Now, if we click on this website, it will take us to a website that provides a much greater deal of information on how to do that. So directly quoting someone, this is the Purdue OWL. They are kind of the leading authority in English and grammar. So anytime that you have a question or a debate, the Purdue OWL is kind of the place to come to, and they will make sure to give you the correct information. So how to use quotation marks. So using quotation marks, I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but it goes straight to direct quotations, which we are doing. We're directly quoting someone. This will give you a walkthrough on what you should do, okay? Quotation marks always come in pairs. Do not open a quotation and fail to close it. So you have quotation marks at the beginning and at the end. Capitalize the first letter of the direct quote when the quoted material is a complete sentence. For you all, when you're quoting these sources, you're going to want to quote the complete sentence, okay? Unless it works into a sentence you're creating, which is a higher level, unless you're comfortable with it, let's quote the whole thing. So, for example, Mr. Johnson, who was working in his field that morning, said, so you see a comma, and then beginning quotation, capital letter, the alien spaceship appeared right before my own 2 eyes. Then you have the ending punctuation with the ending quotation marks. Do not use a capital letter when the quoted material is a fragment or only a piece of the original materials. So if you're not quoting the entire quote or it's not a complete sentence, you won't use a capital sentence. For example, although Mr. Johnson has seen odd happenings on the farm, he stated that the spaceship certainly takes the cake when it comes to unexplainable activities. So you can see it became part of this complete sentence, okay? If you are kind of sitting here going, I'm not really sure how this works, I'm trying to figure it out with Mr. Richard, then you're going to lean toward the first section, okay? The first one where you're going to use a complete sentence. As you begin to raise in your competency and your abilities, you'll be able to work it into sentences. If a direct quotation is interrupted in mid-sentence, do not capitalize the second part of the quotation. This is, again, raising the bar. So I didn't see an actual alien being, Mr. Johnson said, but I sure wish I had. Okay, this is more in dialogue, or if you're writing more of a narrative response. So we probably won't lean toward that. So if you continue through this, I'm not going to read through the whole quotation directions, but those basic steps, the big one you should remember is that whenever you are quoting a complete sentence, introducing it after that verb, like said or according to or mentioned by, you put a comma, start your quotation, and use a capital letter, okay? All right, so let's go back to our lesson here. All right, so here's some examples of using quotes. You can see that these are using those complete sentences and going through that information using punctuation properly. So we looked at the Martin Luther King Jr. Let's look at how this is introduced. So it says, Martin Luther King Jr. explained, comma, in his I Have a Dream speech, comma. So we're introducing this using the word explained, and then so that verb introduction, and then explaining what it is in his I Have a Dream speech, comma, and then quotation mark, capital letter, and then the quote, ending in a period and a quotation mark. Another example of this is according to psychologist Sherry Turkle, we have a comma following, quotation mark, capital letter. The trouble is what happens to face-to-face conversation if your phone is always there, period at the end, quotation mark. Now, if you start with a quotation, in this example, you won't end your quotation with a period, you'll end it with a comma, as follows. A whole body of research shows we can improve your well-being even through just tiny interactions with strangers, ending with a comma, quotation mark, and then Dr. Davis said. Okay, so we still have that verb that's kind of giving us our information. All right, so what should I use when writing argumentative essays? So should you summarize, should you quote, should you paraphrase? So what we're going to lean towards is most of the time you'll combine quoting, paraphrasing, summarizing. But for this example, at a freshman level, we're going to focus on the quotes, okay? As you become a stronger writer, you'll lean more towards paraphrasing and accomplishing your goals through paraphrasing, okay? But for this instance, we're going to lean on quoting. And again, we want to use a few sources. So we're looking for probably in your writing 3 quotes, okay? We're not trying to quote our entire writing, okay? You're not going to quote 12 times. So you don't want to lean too heavily on it. So we're looking for about 3 quotes in your writing. So let's talk about integrating quotations into your writing. So this is how you practice and how you're going to actually be able to do this. So carefully integrate quotations into your text so that they flow smoothly and clearly into the surrounding sentence. So you're going to use these signal phrases, and we talked about this already, but you're going to use these signal phrases or signal verbs, such as the one underlined in the following sentence. So as Dora Welty notes, so we have this introductory phrase, and then we have our signal verb, notes, explains, according to, all of these different types of way to introduce this person and what they said, and then we have our comma, quotation mark, capital letter, learning stamps you with its moments. Childhood's learning is made up of moments. It isn't steady, it's a pull. So you can see that you can have sentences within your quotation and you end with the quotation mark. So the highlighted word, yellow word is a signal verb. The signal verb informs the reader that's following a quote. Okay, the following is a quote. So we have to use these signal verbs. And you don't want to use the same signal verb throughout all your writing. So we're going to have 3 quotations. We don't want to say said or according to or notes, we don't want to say the same thing. So we want to practice on using different signal verbs. And here is a long list of different types of signal verbs that you can use. So you could say, Mr. Richard acknowledges, and Mr. Richard concludes, emphasizes, replies, advises. So you will have this list available to you in this PowerPoint. So keep this available to you so that whenever you're writing, you can go in and say what fits best, what works in my writing. Okay, so that is the importance of using sources and the importance of making sure to quote properly in our writing. So let's practice this. Okay, I know y'all been sitting there not doing anything, so I want to turn it over to you all, and I want to work on using quotes from sources and practicing this. So I want everybody to go back to Echo page. Everybody on the Echo page, okay, and open up the assignment using quotes from sources practice. All right, it says for this assignment, open the template provided. So we've done this many times before. Open up that template. It'll look like this. So I'll give everybody a second to open that up. All right, everybody have it open in here? Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing, and this should take a little bit of time, but we have plenty of time left in class. We still have an hour left in class, so plenty of time to work on this and then start looking at our reading. So this is practicing finding sources and using those verb phrases to introduce, signal phrases and those verbs to introduce a quote, okay? So for this assignment, you will work on the quoting information from reliable sources. For each of the questions below, find a reputable source and answer the question by quoting and giving credit to that source, okay? So we have these columns. Oh, and it says up top, do not use Wikipedia. We talked about this many times in my class. While it is a good place to start, it's not authoritative because anyone basically can go in and change a Wikipedia source. So it's not a great place for you to use in a paper, okay? But a good place to start because they have at the bottom sources that you can use, so you can do it that way. So, but I should not see any Wikipedia links whenever I look at this. So on the left side, we have a question, and it says, like, I have an example here. These top 5 are one answer, okay? It's not debatable, okay? There's one answer that is the answer to that question, okay? So the question here is, which country in the world has the highest population, okay? You might know that off the top of your head, but I still want you to look these up and use good sources. I found this source, the Pew Research Fact Tank web source, and I pasted it in, and then I made a quote here using our signal verbs, and those are listed, so you don't have to click back to the PowerPoint. Those are listed at the bottom. So I chose to say according to, and I think that is, it's not even on our list, but it's one that is appropriate, okay? So it says, according to the Pew Research Center, comma, quotation mark, capital letter, China has the world's largest population, 1.42 billion, comma, followed by India, 1.35 billion. So let's go to the website. Let me show you where I found this. Go down. I think it's in this first sentence here. And you'll see that I directly copied and pasted. It is a direct quote. That's why we use the quotation marks. This isn't paraphrased or summarized. It is directly quoting. So you're okay to copy and paste if you give them credit the way I did. Now, another thing you need to be thinking about this is the power of saying the Pew Research Center. That is a very reputable and respected organization, okay? Part of the way you can do that is you can go to like look, and we've done this before, and this is kind of reminding you, this is like the crap research. So I went and, looked at about Pew Research Center. It's a nonpartisan fact tank that informs the public about issues, talk about their mission. And if you look through here, they do research. They have a method. They have people who are doctors and well educated. Very clear that this is a strong, good resource that people are going to see and they're going to respect immediately. Okay. Now, when I first looked up what country has the highest population, when I first looked that up, my first options and Pew Research comes up first because I've been looking at that. But there was this, where is it? Infoplease.com, I think. And this was, this isn't the one, but this one doesn't necessarily have any reputable background or where they're getting their information. It's not as bad, but there was one, I'm not sure which one it was, and I don't want to click on a ton of them. But as soon as I clicked on it, it had political ads on it. It had a bunch of information that just had nothing to do with what I was researching. So obviously, very quickly, it failed the crap test. Okay, I was like, this isn't a good source. I'm not going to use it. Another way to look at that is to, and it might have been this one because I did click on that one. Yeah, I think it was this one, Internet World Stats. But it had a lot of links to other like tables and information that just had nothing to do with this. So it just wasn't a strong, and it's a .com. You want to look for .orgs, .edus, maybe .info, but looking for those strong websites. So let's look at another one together, and then I'll turn you all loose here. So which U.S. state has the largest land area? So we'll go out and find that one. Just open up a new. So we can look which state has the largest land area. Anybody know off the top of their head? Alaska, yeah. So right off the top, right away, Google gives us the answer, okay? Do we trust Google right off the bat? No, we should not, okay? We shouldn't just automatically trust Google, okay? Now, on this, when you're like, Alaska, that's right, that's something I've heard 1,000 times, it's easy to be like, okay, that's correct. But we should not just listen to Google, okay? So let's go and look at what they gave us. They gave us nationsonline.org. Then we want to check and say One World Nations Online, and we want to see what's their point, what are they doing? So they're trying to promote that every nation assumes responsibility for the world, information sources. Let's see if we can trust them. Yes, there's a link to all this. I'm not seeing any. Okay, so they are saying their sources here. So BBC News, Center for International Earth and Science, European Commission, which is government. Okay, so these are actually really good sources that they're pulling information from. So we could do the crap test on this and say it's a good source. But a lot of times that first thing that pops up on Google is a Wikipedia source or a source, maybe even a blog or something like that we can't really trust. So you could pull information from that, put the link, and then practice putting in that information. So then we could pull, if we knew Alaska, we could find the quote, and then we could say, according to, or let's try a different one. What was the website here? The Nations Online. We don't want to say Nations Online Project. That's what we want to say. Nations Online Project explains that, comma, quotation mark, and then our quote. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to let you all work on this. When you are finished with this, you're going to go over and be looking at the readings. If you are at home, I have given you the handouts and what my goal for you to do at home and what you need to be bringing in on Monday is the annotated. So let's go back to Echo and look at this, because I'm going to let you all go and do this with the rest of class. If you're looking at the prompt sources in class handout or on No Red Ink, I want you to annotate on your sheet what you want to include as a quotable source, okay? And I want you to annotate both for agreeing with the week of no screens and against. So it can be more than 3 quotes. But everything that you're like, oh, that's really good information that supports one of the two sides, I want you to do it. And what you can do is circle everything that agrees with the 1 week, and then underline everything, kind of like nose and need to nose, underline everything that disagrees with 1 week that you can quote. And I'll put that into the agenda so that we can see that and know that. So I'm going to let you all go and work on those 2 things. So the assignment using quotes from sources practice, and then whenever you come in on Monday, I need to be able to see that you have annotated your sources, okay? And I'm going to let you all leave the Google Meet. If you have questions, pop back in or go on to GoGuardian, and we'll answer those questions.